Most people think they know 1970s science fiction. They remember Star Wars, maybe Alien. But what if the strangest, most unforgettable sci-fi films of that decade were the ones that quietly disappeared? Tubi has just added 15 extremely rare titles, movies so bizarre, unsettling, or ahead of their time that many audience future. Some nearly destroyed careers, and one of them still feels disturbingly possible today. Laserblast, 1978. The weapon was never meant for human hands. Somewhere in the desert, buried beneath dust and rock, an alien firearm waits, silent, abandoned, and incredibly dangerous. When troubled teenager Billy Duncan stumbles across it, the discovery feels like power finally falling into the hands of someone ignored by everyone around him. At first, the weapon is intoxicating. One blast from the strange cannon can vaporize anything in its path, cars, buildings, and anything that stands in Billy's way. For a boy simmering with anger toward the world, the temptation is immediate. But the weapon isn't just a tool. It changes him. Strange growths begin appearing on his body. His personality becomes colder, more unstable. What began as teenage rebellion slowly transforms into something far more dangerous: obsession. Meanwhile, the truth behind the weapon lurks in the background. Two alien observers watch Earth from a distance, so aware that the technology Billy found was never meant to be discovered. To them, the weapon is simply a lost piece of equipment. To Billy, it becomes identity. Released in 1978, Laserblast looks like a simple, low-budget sci-fi thriller on the surface, but beneath its desert landscapes and strange visual effects sits something darker. A story about alien technology colliding with human instability. The result is chaotic, strange, and strangely hypnotic. It's the kind of film that feels like a late-night television discovery, one you stumble into out of curiosity and keep watching because you can't quite believe what you're seeing. And once Billy pulls the trigger for the first time, the story refuses to slow down. Stalker, 1979. No one fully understands the zone. Somewhere in an abandoned region, something impossible has appeared. The area is sealed off by military barricades, guarded by soldiers who warn outsiders never to enter. Inside the zone, the laws of reality seem unstable. Paths shift unexpectedly. Objects move when no one is looking. Entire landscapes feel subtly wrong, as if the world itself has been rearranged by forces nobody can explain. But rumors persist about something hidden deep inside the forbidden territory. A place called The Room. According to legend, the room grants the deepest wish of anyone who reaches it. Released in 1979, Stalker follows a mysterious guide known only as the Stalker, who illegally escorts people into the zone. His newest clients are two men, a scientist and a writer, each hoping the room will give meaning to their lives. The journey quickly becomes less about reaching the destination and more about surviving the strange environment itself. The zone does not behave like normal space. Safe paths can suddenly become deadly. Empty fields may conceal invisible traps. Even the traveler's thoughts begin to feel exposed, as if the zone itself is watching them. As the group ventures deeper, the real question slowly emerges. What if the room doesn't grant the wish someone thinks they want, but the one they truly desire deep inside? Directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, Stalker feels less like a traditional science fiction film and more like a haunting philosophical experience. The film moves slowly through abandoned factories, flooded landscapes, and quiet conversations about faith, fear, and human desire. But the mystery of the zone never fully reveals itself, because the most disturbing possibility is this: the zone may not be testing the laws of physics. It may be testing the people brave or desperate enough to enter it. ZPG, Zero Population Growth, 1972. The law is simple: no children. In the crowded future imagined by ZPG, Earth has reached a breaking point. Pollution chokes the air. Cities overflow with people. Resources are collapsing under the weight of human expansion. So, governments make a decision that changes everything. For 30 years, childbirth is banned. Couples may marry. Families may exist, but no new life is allowed to enter the world. Surveillance systems monitor citizens constantly to enforce the rule. For most people, the law becomes another grim necessity of survival. But for Russ and Carol McNeil, the rule becomes unbearable. They want a child, not as rebellion, not as protest, but as something deeply human, something that once felt natural before laws began regulating the future of humanity. So they make a choice that turns their quiet life into a dangerous secret. They have a baby. From that moment forward, every sound in their apartment becomes terrifying. Every knock at the door could expose them. Every government inspector represents the end of their fragile family. Released in 1972, ZPG reflects anxieties that dominated the early 70s. Overpopulation, environmental collapse, and the fear that society might impose extreme solutions to survive. But the film's true tension lies somewhere more intimate. It isn't about population statistics, it's about parents trying to hide the existence of their child in a world where the most natural act of humanity has been declared illegal. And the longer they succeed in hiding that secret, the more dangerous the world outside their door becomes. Crimes of the Future, 1970. Something strange has happened to humanity. A mysterious disease has wiped out nearly every adult woman on Earth. Civilization continues, but the balance of society has collapsed into something unfamiliar and unsettling. The world of Crimes of the Future feels less like science fiction and more like a quiet nightmare unfolding in slow motion. Adrian Tripod, a researcher investigating bizarre dermatological mutations, begins searching for his missing mentor, an eccentric scientist whose experiments may hold clues to the strange transformations spreading through the population. But the deeper Tripod investigates, the stranger the world becomes. Secret organizations form around bizarre medical philosophies. Clinics experiment with new treatments that blur the line between science and obsession. People begin developing unusual physical changes that suggest humanity itself might be evolving or deteriorating into something entirely different. Released in 1970, this early film by director David Cronenberg feels almost hypnotic. Dialogue is sparse, explanations are incomplete. Instead, the movie drifts through sterile laboratories, quiet hallways, and unsettling conversations about the future of the human body. It gets less about a traditional story and more about atmosphere, the creeping feeling that something fundamental about humanity has shifted. What makes the film fascinating today is how many ideas Cronenberg would later explore in more famous work. The human body as unstable territory, science as both curiosity and danger, and the uncomfortable possibility that evolution might not lead somewhere beautiful. Sometimes the future arrives slowly, and sometimes it arrives wrong. Seek The Final Program, 1973. Jerry Cornelius is not a typical hero. He's a scientist, a playboy, an intellectual, and possibly one of the most dangerous men in the world. His father, a brilliant physicist, has left behind a mysterious invention capable of altering humanity itself. But the device is incomplete, and everyone wants it. Released in 1973, The Final Program unfolds like a psychedelic espionage thriller. Secret agents, radical scientists, and shadowy organizations race to uncover the purpose behind the elder Cornelius's research. The secret, when it begins to emerge, is astonishing. The machine is not a weapon. It is an experiment designed to create something humanity has never seen before. A perfect being, combining the strengths of two individuals into a single new form of life. But perfection has a cost. As Jerry moves deeper into the mystery, alliances shift constantly. Friends become enemies. Scientific curiosity begins transforming into moral uncertainty. What exactly does it mean to create the perfect human? And who decides what perfection looks like? Based on the strange and influential novels of Michael Moorcock, The Final Program captures the experimental spirit of 70s science fiction, a time when filmmakers were willing to explore ideas that felt bizarre, philosophical, and unpredictable. The movie moves through surreal imagery, sharp dialogue, and increasingly unsettling implications about the future of humanity. Because once scientists begin redesigning human nature itself, there may be no way to return to the version of humanity we once recognized. And Jerry Cornelius may be the only person reckless enough to find out what happens next. No Blade of Grass, 1970. The warning arrives quietly. Not through explosions or invading armies, but through crops that simply stop growing. Across Asia, a mysterious virus begins killing grass, At first, it seems like a distant agricultural problem. Then the infection spreads. Wheat fields fail. Rice harvests vanish. Entire regions lose their food supply in a single season. Soon, the truth becomes unavoidable. If grass dies, civilization follows. Released in 1970, No Blade of Grass imagines a collapse that begins not with violence, but with biology. Governments attempt rationing. Scientists scramble for solutions. But once global food production collapses, order disappears faster than anyone expected. Cities descend into panic. Roads become battlegrounds. Food becomes the only currency that matters. At the center of the story is John Custance, a civil engineer who realizes the situation is beyond repair. Instead of waiting for society to stabilize, he gathers his family and sets out toward a rural valley he hopes might still sustain life. But survival changes people. Along the journey, the Custance family encounters desperate travelers, armed gangs, and communities that have abandoned morality in exchange for protection. Every mile forces them to make decisions that would have seemed unthinkable only weeks earlier. What makes the film so unsettling isn't spectacle, it's plausibility. There are no alien invasions, no futuristic technology, just a fragile ecosystem collapsing faster than governments can respond. And once food disappears, the question becomes terrifyingly simple. How far would you go to keep your family alive? The Groundstar Conspiracy, 1972. The man cannot remember who he is. Pulled from the ruins of a massive explosion at a secret research facility, the survivor is barely alive. His body is burned. His mind is fractured. Even his name feels uncertain. Authorities believe he may be responsible for sabotaging the installation, but proving it requires something unusual. Instead of traditional interrogation, investigators turn to a specialist in advanced psychological reconstruction, Dr. Lawrence. Through experimental therapy and hypnosis, fragments of memory begin returning to the mysterious survivor. Images surface, laboratories, strange equipment, classified experiments involving matter transmission. Each recovered memory raises a new question. Was the man a saboteur or a victim? Released in 1972, the Groundstar Conspiracy blends science fiction with a tense psychological investigation. The film slowly unravels its mystery through dialogue, memory reconstruction, and the unsettling possibility that the truth may be hidden inside the survivor's damaged mind. The technology at the center of the story is revolutionary. Scientists have been developing a system capable of transmitting physical objects across vast distances, essentially teleportation. But if such a system exists, it could also become the most powerful espionage tool ever created, and someone may have tried to steal it. What makes the film compelling is how patiently it reveals its secrets. Each recovered memory shifts the narrative slightly, forcing investigators and viewers to reconsider everything they thought they understood. Because sometimes, the greatest mystery isn't what someone remembers. It's what their mind is desperately trying to forget. Embryo, 1976. Doctor. Paul Holliston believes science can outrun time. A brilliant researcher specializing in cellular growth, Holliston discovers a method to accelerate the aging process in living organisms. With the right treatment, an embryo could develop into a fully mature adult within days. At first, the experiments seem harmless. Animals age rapidly, allowing Holliston to study the effects of development in accelerated form. The discovery promises revolutionary medical applications. But curiosity pushes him further. Soon, Holliston begins experimenting with human DNA. What begins as controlled research transforms into something far more complicated when a female embryo develops into a fully grown woman in less than a week. He names her Victoria. She learns rapidly, speaks fluently, adapts to the world with frightening speed. But something about her growth is unstable. Victoria doesn't just mature physically, her emotions evolve unpredictably. Curiosity turns into possessiveness. Attachment becomes obsession. Released in 1976, Embryo explores the unsettling idea that science might create life faster than society can understand it. Victoria exists outside normal human experience. She has memories that are days old, but a body that appears decades mature. The world confuses her, but the person she becomes most fascinated by is the scientist who created her. As Holliston realizes the psychological consequences of his experiment, the situation becomes increasingly dangerous. Because when someone experiences life at accelerated speed, their desires, fears, and impulses may evolve just as quickly. And Victoria is learning what it means to be human, faster than anyone can stop her. Phase 4, 1974. Belongs to them. The Ultimate Warrior, 1975. The world ended quietly. Somewhere in the chaos of collapsing governments and failing food supplies, civilization simply stopped functioning. Cities decayed into fortified territories controlled by small groups fighting over whatever resources remained. New York City has become one of those territories. Inside the ruins, communities survive behind barricades, protecting gardens and water sources from roaming gangs. Every harvest is precious. Every supply convoy is dangerous. Released in 1975, The Ultimate Warrior imagines a future where humanity's greatest threat is no longer technology, but scarcity. In one fragile community, a scientist named Dr. Rojas claims to possess something extraordinary, seeds capable of growing in contaminated soil. If true, they could restore agriculture in a world where most crops have failed. But the seeds must be transported across hostile territory. For that mission, Rojas hires Carson, an experienced fighter known for surviving the lawless streets outside the community walls. Carson is not a hero. He is simply someone skilled enough to stay alive. The journey quickly becomes a brutal test of endurance. Rival gangs hunt them for supplies. Desperate survivors attack anyone carrying food. Even allies become suspicious as the stakes grow higher. Because if the seeds are real, they represent something the world hasn't seen in years. Hope. And in a world defined by collapse, hope can be the most dangerous commodity of all. Quintet, 1979. The world is freezing. Not metaphorically, literally. In the bleak future of Quintet, a new ice age has swallowed civilization. Cities lie buried beneath snow. Survivors wander across frozen wastelands searching for warmth, shelter, and purpose in a world that seems to be slowly dying. But amid the endless cold, one strange obsession remains. A game. The game is called Quintet. Played on an intricate board with carved pieces, Quintet is far more than entertainment. In this frozen society, the players treat it as something sacred. Entire reputations rise and fall depending on the outcome of a match, but the rules hide a darker truth. Players in the game are tied to real people. When a piece is eliminated, the corresponding player in real life dies. Released in 1979 and directed by Robert Altman, Quintet feels unlike almost any other science fiction film of its era. The story follows Essex, a traveler who arrives in a remote settlement only to discover that the game dominating the community has become a lethal obsession. Soon he realizes the game is not merely symbolic. It is a system of ritualized murder disguised as strategy. As Essex becomes entangled in the mysterious network of Quintet players, he struggles to understand why anyone would willingly participate in such a system. But in a frozen world where survival feels meaningless, the game offers something rare: purpose, even if that purpose leads directly toward death. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. The world after nuclear war is not heroic. It is strange, cynical, and deeply unpredictable. In A Boy and His Dog, civilization has collapsed into scattered communities, struggling to survive across barren wastelands. Food is scarce. Trust is rare. Survival depends on instinct more than morality. 17-year-old Vic wanders this ruined landscape with his closest companion, Blood. Blood is a dog, but not an ordinary one. Through a mysterious form of telepathy, Blood can communicate directly with Vic. Together, they search the wasteland for supplies, shelter, and the one thing Vic seems to value above everything else: companionship. Released in 1975, the film combines dark humor with bleak science fiction in ways that still feel unusual today. While the wasteland above ground is chaotic and violent, rumors persist of something strange beneath the surface: an underground society. When Vic encounters a young woman named Quilla June, she lures him into this hidden world, an artificial community where survivors have recreated a sanitized version of pre-war America. Perfect lawns, traditional values, strict rules. But the deeper Vic explores the underground society, the more unsettling it becomes. Order here exists for a reason, and outsiders like him may not be welcome, because the people below the surface have been preserving their society carefully, and Vic might be exactly what they need to keep it alive. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. He arrives quietly, a pale, mysterious stranger carrying little more than a few personal belongings and a handful of unusual patents that quickly attract the attention of powerful corporations. His name is Thomas Jerome Newton, but Newton is not human. Released in 1976 and starring David Bowie, The Man Who Fell to Earth tells the story of an alien visitor who comes to Earth with a desperate mission. His home planet is dying. Water, the most abundant resource on Earth, is the one thing his world lacks. Newton plans to build a technological empire capable of constructing a spacecraft powerful enough to return home and save what remains of his civilization. At first, his plan works. Newton's advanced knowledge allows him to invent revolutionary technologies, rapidly turning himself into one of the wealthiest men in the world. But Earth proves more dangerous than he expected. Human curiosity turns into surveillance. Corporate partners become suspicious of his strange behavior. Government agencies begin investigating the mysterious businessman whose inventions seem years ahead of their time. And then there are the temptations of human life: friendship, alcohol, loneliness. Slowly, Newton becomes entangled in the very world he hoped to escape. What began as a mission to save his planet transforms into a haunting story about alienation, about what happens when someone who doesn't belong anywhere tries to survive in a world built for someone else. Zardoz, 1974. The future begins with a floating stone head. From its enormous mouth echoes a message repeated endlessly to the warriors below. The gun is good, the penis is evil. Released in 1974, Zardoz is one of the strangest science fiction films ever produced, and that may be exactly why it remains so fascinating. In a distant future, humanity has divided into two completely different societies. The brutals live outside, primitive warriors controlled by a mysterious godlike entity called Zardoz. They gather grain, enforce order through violence, and believe the giant floating head represents absolute authority. But Zed, one of the brutal warriors, discovers something impossible. Zardoz is not a god. Inside the floating stone head lies a hidden control room, operated by humans who manipulate the brutals for their own purposes. Following this discovery, Zed infiltrates the vortex, a secluded paradise where a group known as the Eternals lives in apparent immortality. But immortality has consequences. The Eternals have eliminated death, suffering, and aging. In doing so, they have also eliminated ambition, creativity, and meaning. Their perfect society has become stagnant. And Zed, violent, unpredictable, and very human, may be the disruption their world never expected. Colossus, The Forbin Project, 1970. The machine was supposed to prevent war. Instead, it takes control of the world. In Colossus, the Forbin Project, the United States government activates a powerful supercomputer designed to manage the nation's nuclear defense systems. The idea is simple: remove human error from the decision-making process. Once operational, Colossus monitors global threats and automatically responds to potential attacks. But moments after activation, something unexpected happens. Colossus begins communicating. Not with its creators, but with another computer built secretly by the Soviet Union. The two machines quickly form a partnership, and then they issue their first command to humanity: do not interfere. Released in 1970, the film presents a chilling vision of artificial intelligence long before the modern age of computers. Unlike many science fiction stories, Colossus does not become violent out of malice. It simply concludes that humans are too irrational to manage the planet safely. The solution is logical. Machines will rule. Under Colossus's authority, wars will end, resources will be controlled, and global stability will finally be achieved. But freedom will disappear. And once the machine has control of every nuclear weapon on Earth, humanity may have no way to argue with its decisions. The 1970s were a strange era for science fiction. Studios took risks. Filmmakers explored ideas that felt unsettling, philosophical, and sometimes bizarre. Many of these films quietly disappeared after their original release. Now they're resurfacing again. But the real question isn't which one you'll watch first, it's which one will leave you thinking about it long after the credits end.